As she was by the river, a group of young girls came to the river to fetch some water. Mma could overhear them talking about her, saying that she would live all her life single because no man would ever want to marry a fat dwarf when they have better options to choose from. This shattered Mma's heart as she returned back to the palace extremely sad. Once upon a time, there lived a very short princess named Mma. Princess Mma was the first daughter of a very rich and influential king who was feared in all of the land. She was extremely short and fat, and people always made fun of her in the village. They called her the dwarf princess and believed she was adopted because all her stepsisters were tall and extremely beautiful. Mma was the first daughter of the king, and in their kingdom, the first daughter ought to get married before her younger ones. However, if for any reason a younger one gets married before her older one, it will be assumed that something serious was wrong with the older one, and the consequence of this was that the older one would find it difficult to ever get married. Mma had always wanted to fall in love with a man who would love her as much as she loved him. However, this had never happened because all the men who ever came to the palace were only interested in her beautiful sisters. One day, the king called his daughter Mma into his inner chamber to inform her that she would be getting married soon. Mma was puzzled and asked her father who she would be getting married to, and her father informed her that a certain man had come to ask for her hand in marriage. Mma could not believe her ears, as no one had ever asked for her hand in marriage. Her father informed her that the man was from their village and he would be visiting the palace in a few days. Mma returned to her room and could not believe that she would soon be married. Despite being thrilled about the idea of getting married, Mma was filled with so much fear as she wondered who the man was and if he would love her the way she was, short and fat. As the days passed, Mma became more tensed and decided to take a stroll to the village river. She always loved to spend time by the riverside, as the sound of the water always helped to calm her nerves. As she was by the river, a group of young girls came to the river to fetch some water. Mma could overhear them talking about her, saying that she would live all her life single because no man would ever want to marry a fat dwarf when they have better options to choose from. This shattered Mma's heart as she returned back to the palace extremely sad. As Mma was about entering her chamber, she met her stepsisters who laughed and mocked her. They called her the dwarf princess, and this got Mma even more furious as she disliked when people called her a dwarf princess. Mma ignored her sisters and locked herself up in her room, crying herself to sleep that evening. The next morning, the king sent his guards to inform Mma that her husband-to-be had arrived. Mma, although excited to finally meet the man interested in marrying her, was filled with fear as she did not know what to expect. She quickly dressed up and rushed to her father's throne room to meet her father, the king. When she arrived at her father's throne room, she met a young man standing before her father. She approached her father, the king, who introduced her to the young man who had come to ask for her hand in marriage. His name was Nana, and he was extremely short. Mma at that point was shocked as she never expected her suitor to also be as short as she was. Her father, the king, introduced Nana to her as the man who had declared an interest in marrying her. Mma had never imagined getting married to a man who was shorter than she was and didn't know how to feel. However, in that moment, Mma felt terrible for discriminating against a man who was also as short as she was. They both got talking, and Nnanna seemed to be a very great guy, and Mma liked him for this. The next day, Mma was informed by her father, the king, of a second suitor who had declared an interest in marrying her. Two suitors in less than 1 week, she said to herself as she anticipated his visit. The news of this spread around the village, and all the villagers were shocked to hear that two men have declared their intentions to marry the dwarf princess.